True happiness is often confused with accumulation, the steady pile of things that promise comfort or security. We believe more possessions, more achievements, or more social connections will eventually fill a void we cannot name. Yet history shows an enduring pattern. The people who live the simplest lives frequently report the deepest reserves of peace. The question is not whether a great life requires great resources. It is whether great happiness fundamentally demands great complexity. We are constantly bombarded by cultural signals that equate value with scale: a bigger house, a faster car, a more impressive title. This creates a perpetual state of yearning. But if the greatest joy stems from subtraction rather than addition, what does that actually say about the purpose of modern life? The argument is that simplicity is not merely an aesthetic preference. It is a profound philosophical discipline essential for achieving genuine contentment. To understand this relationship, we must look to Stoicism. Epictetus believed that our freedom lies entirely within our capacity to judge events, separating what we can control from what we cannot. He taught that suffering often arises from mismanaging expectations, from needing things outside of us to behave in a certain way. This framework suggests that attachment is the root problem. When we tie our self-worth or our peace of mind to external variables, the stock market, a flawless career trajectory, a specific social approval, we build an entire structure on sand. The simple life offers a radical return to this internal locus of control. By reducing material dependency, one reduces one's exposure to the vast and unpredictable machinery of need. But there is a complication to that picture. Simplicity can be misinterpreted as mere deprivation or resignation. We sometimes mistake quiet discomfort for virtue, believing that less means better without understanding why. The philosopher Thoreau understood this difference well in his time at Walden Pond. He did not advocate for misery, he advocated for attention. His experiment was not about having nothing, but about discarding everything superfluous so that the things truly necessary, the rhythm of seasons, the clarity of thought, the necessity of basic human connection, could be heard above the din. The goal is therefore not austerity for its own sake, but radical focus, narrowing the field of attention until the essential details become visible again. The true work of simple living is thus an act of resistance against the cult of infinite growth. Modern economies operate on a premise that demand must constantly outstrip supply, requiring us to feel perpetually wanting. This manufactured scarcity dictates our desires. By electing simplicity, by choosing to live within means appropriate to one's actual needs rather than one's cultural presentation of ambition, we reclaim psychic space. We stop allocating mental energy to managing perceived threats or chasing unattainable benchmarks. Instead, we redirect that enormous amount of focus toward understanding the immediate moment, the quality of the light, the flavor of a simple meal, the structure of an honest conversation. This shift in attention is what generates happiness. It is not the removal of objects, but the realignment of consciousness. When we cease to measure our worth by the things that can be counted, we find an entirely different metric for life. We begin measuring time by depth rather than by pace. The great discomfort of contemporary society is the feeling of being perpetually distracted. Our attention scattered across 1,000 digital threads, never settling long enough to process any single idea fully. This scattering fundamentally prevents deep satisfaction. To live simply means rebuilding that focused capacity, turning away from the overwhelming complexity of the external world and toward the manageable, predictable rhythm of internal life. So when we think back to that initial understanding, that happiness is not a steady accumulation, we must remember it was never about subtraction for its own sake. It was always about calibration. The goal is not an empty room, but an uncluttered mind capable of recognizing true value. The greatest richness lies not in the breadth of one's holdings, but in the narrow depth of one's attention, focused on what is genuinely enough. This shift in focus, from acquisition to appreciation, is perhaps the most radical pivot we can make as modern beings. It's an act of profound intellectual discipline, requiring us to constantly ask, is this necessary? Does this truly add value, or is it merely adding volume? The simple life teaches us that scarcity isn't always a lack of resources. Often, it's the scarcity of attention, easily scattered and spent on things that ultimately leave us feeling emptier than before we started. The realization that happiness is found in these small moments, the quiet cup of coffee enjoyed without scrolling through endless feeds, the satisfaction of building something physical with your own hands, the deep conversation uninterrupted by notifications, is a profound antidote to burnout culture. It reclaims time, which is our most finite and precious resource. When we stop needing external validation or material upgrades to feel whole, we begin to inhabit a state of self-sufficiency that no amount of wealth can buy. We become resourceful in the truest sense of the word, finding joy not despite our circumstances, but within them. If we consider the trajectory of modern life, the relentless upward curve of desire and expectation, it is exhausting. It promises fulfillment at every corner, yet delivers only debt. Simplicity offers a quiet counter-narrative. It suggests that the most fulfilling lives are often those lived with intentional boundaries. They teach us to distinguish between what we want and what we genuinely need, allowing us to shed the accumulated weight of cultural expectations and societal pressure. And so, when we reflect on why simplicity leads to happiness, we return to where we began, realizing that true richness is not found in a sprawling collection of things, but in the focused capacity for gratitude. It's not about retreating from life entirely. It's about cultivating an inner garden, a contained space where what matters can finally take root and breathe. Perhaps the greatest luxury available to us today isn't the newest gadget or the longest vacation, but simply the gift of stillness, the ability to sit with our own thoughts, unedited and undisturbed. And in that quiet stillness, we are finally able to hear the faint, steady rhythm of contentment, whispering the undeniable truth that sufficiency is always enough.